Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the messengers in our home. Dear Kardec Radio listeners, welcome to another episode of The Messengers in Our Home. Tonight we're going to talk about preparations, which is chapter 14. Hello Mackenzie.
Hi Francisca. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another chapter of The Messengers in Our Home.
Before we get started, we'd like to invite you for our opening prayer. Dear Mother, Father God, Creator of the universe and of our yet small hearts, we are so grateful for being gathered in your name in this virtual meeting with friends around the world, willing to learn more from your teachings. I'm grateful for soothing our hearts and consoling us when facing difficulties. And as we continue to learn with Andre Louis, we would also like to thank all the good spirits that are working here on earth and in the spirit realm to help us as humanity learn and grow each day, and to give us the opportunity of their support, of their love, and of their wisdom, as long as we elevate our thoughts and make an effort to connect to them, either through prayer during the day or during our intelligent sleep, asking before we go to sleep to be able to learn in the spirit world and get the support we need. And with your permission, we would like to start our meeting. So be it. And let us now listen to the reading of chapter 14. Enjoy.
Chapter 14. Preparations. Aniceto came to see us that very night. He began by saying, "Tomorrow, the three of us will leave for an assignment down on the earth. Telesforo has suggested a number of important things to do while we are there, but I can take care of them myself. Meanwhile, you will both reap a week's worth of experience and service." I was overjoyed. I had gone back home several times to the town where I had lived my last lifetime. However, until now, I had not taken much time to examine the broad potential for fraternal concourse. Every now and then, I had been confronted with difficult situations in which my former fellow citizens were dealing with important problems, but I felt incapable of effectively helping them to find a desirable solution. I didn't have the spiritual techniques for it, nor did I have enough confidence in myself. Aniceto had been listening to these deep inner thoughts. He addressed me specifically, assuring me, "You weren't able to help your incarnate friends at those times, Andre, because you hadn't yet acquired the ability to see. But that is reasonable. While in the flesh, we are often inclined to notice only the effects without considering the causes behind them. In the beggar, we see only indigence. In the ailing person, only a physical breakdown. However, it is crucial to identify the causes." After reflecting for a few moments, he continued, "Nevertheless, we shall try to remedy the situation. Tomorrow at dawn, you and Vicente are to go to the magnetic aid chamber for sense enhancement. It is next to the messenger center. I will make arrangements so that you both can acquire the needed improvement in your vision. But I would ask you to seek similar help through prayer. Ask God to grant the expansion of your visual abilities. Be mindfully conscious of the grandeur of this sublime gift, and, above all, send to the Eternal Majesty a thought of consecration to His love and divine service. I do not want to incite you to unwitting fanatical attitudes. Here, we cannot abuse prayer as we used to according to the corruption of our earthly sentiments. What I mean is, in the carnal realm, we used prayer in obedience to capricious fancies, pleading for easy answers that would be detrimental to our enlightenment. But here, Andre, prayer is the individual's commitment to God, a commitment involving witness, effort, and dedication to higher purposes. More than anything else, all our prayers should signify a faithful heart. Those who pray in our spiritual condition use prayer to attune their minds to the highest spheres, and then a new light shines down on their pathways. Faced with Aniseto's remarkable ability, I didn't dare say anything. I even began to fear the possibility that any one of my thoughts could be exposed. After kindly words of friendship and encouragement, our magnanimous instructor left us. Vicente and I were reveling in our magnificent plans. For the first time, we would be working on behalf of incarnates in general. Our repose that night was very brief. We eagerly awaited daybreak so we could receive magnetic aid at the chamber. Few times had I ever prayed with such emotion. To begin, enlightened technicians established a direct mental relationship with us. Next, they submitted us to various spiritual applications which I still cannot understand to their full extent and transcendence. I noticed that the magnetic work did not rob us of our consciousness, so I used the opportunity to pray, which was more of a commitment to work than an act of supplication per se. A while later, we were told we were free to go. At first, I did not notice anything unusual, although I did feel a new kind of courage and joy in my heart. It was a well-being that I had not known before, and my visual and auditory senses seemed clearer. Aniceto was waiting for us at the center. He seemed very pleased. Our departure was set for noon. I eagerly waited for the designated time. We didn't leave No Solar like terrestrial travelers, who are usually loaded down with provisions and baggage. Here, said Aniceto jovially, all our baggage is what we carry in our heart. On Earth, it consists of suitcases, bags, and packages, but here we must carry purposes, energies, knowledge, and above all, the sincere willingness to serve. Some travel companions standing nearby laughed with delight. Aniceto gave a few orders. He assigned colleagues to head the groups of trainees. He set up work schedules and said that he would return to the colony every day for a few hours, leaving Vicente and me on the Earth's surface to perform tasks and make observations that would take the whole week. Full of hope, we said goodbye to our comrades in struggle. This was our first training and work excursion on behalf of our fellow beings. Just as we were about to set off, Aniceto remarked, I believe that this trip will be different for you. Of course, you are accustomed to free passage, which is granted by our superiors for our normal work-related activities. It is also granted to our enlightened brothers and sisters who are on the eve of reincarnating. "What do you mean?" asked Vicente, puzzled. "Why, didn't you know? The lower regions between No Solar and the physical realms are so large that they demand a wide, well-kept road that requires maintenance, just like important routes down on the earth. There, physical obstacles cause problems. Here, it's spiritual obstacles. The road needs to be kept clear for the essential interchange that must occur. Those who are involved in the duties of our sacred itinerary need to be able to come and go freely, and those who come from the higher spheres to reincarnate must be able to proceed as harmoniously as possible without direct contact with vibrations from the lowest spheres. The absorption of inferior elements would cause serious imbalances in their rebirth. Such disturbances must be avoided. We, however, are pursuing an expedition of learning and experience. Consequently, we mustn't give preference to the easiest paths." Aniceto saw that we were confused and ended by saying, "Let's imagine a huge river separating two different regions. There is one shallow spot that offers a speedy crossing, but there are several passages across deep gorges." From what he was saying, I concluded that he could return to the colony whenever he wanted without encountering obstacles of any sort because of the spiritual power that enveloped him. However, he was making himself a pilgrim like us due to his devotion to the mission of teaching. Vicente and I did not have adequate vibrational elements at our disposal for such a great feat. We were commonplace, as were the majority of the inhabitants of our spirit city. We possessed the early stages of volitation, but were still very far from having acquired it in full. Thus, I had never seen energy and humility so beautifully married. Aniceto was directing us firmly like a strong, learned guide, but he had no qualms about making himself like us so that he could serve as a devoted companion. Meditating on this sublime lesson while in full volitation, I watched as the spires of No Solar faded into the background. So, tonight we're talking about Chapter 14, Preparations. We already heard the reading of the chapter, but before we start making some comments about it, I would just like to remind everyone that, as we said in the beginning of this new study, this book, The Messengers, is roughly, well, although we don't see the divisions in the book, it's roughly divided in 3 parts. And we just finished the very first part, which goes from the beginning of the book up to chapter 13, and I mentioned this last week. Now we're starting a second part, which is very interesting the way it starts with a chapter named Preparations. We already know that this book the story passes through basically a week, more or less a week of work on Earth and on these preparations, while Andre and Vicente and Aniceto are still in No Solar, gathering information and preparing for the work that they're about to do when they come here on Earth, to help some incarnate brothers of ours. So it is interesting, as I said, that this chapter is called Preparations. And why do I say that, and why do I repeat that? Is that we could probably call this second session, this second part of the book, from chapter 14 up to chapter 32. Well, third part will start with chapter 33. So it's 19 chapters from 14 to 32 of a certain kind of preparations, which is also interesting because what we've seen so far up to this moment were, how could we say? We could say it were like eye-openings or advices or suggestions, another type of preparation, right? So you go to the school, we go to school, we have the teachings of our professors, we exchange experiences with friends of ours, people that we just met, and that's basically what we had in these first 13 chapters, right? The main chapters, let's say, are the last chapters of this first part, because we have the experiences of different spirits, and what Andre and Vicente are learning from them are what they have gone through while they were incarnated, what were their problems there, what types of lessons they learned, what did they do, what they didn't do, and naturally they are all retelling those stories to us after that great lecture that spent 2 chapters by Telesforo, right? So we can imagine how important that lecture is for this book and for ourselves, because it's recounted, retold in 2 chapters in this very first part. So today we're starting chapter 14, once again, preparations. And although their journey to go from Nosolar to Earth starts right now, they will only get to Earth after chapter 32. Right? So these next 19 chapters, we will talk about their preparation out of those very first moments of experiences, of intellectual experience with those spirits. Now we'll start to see a different type of preparation. It is as if, well, now you got the lessons, you got the basics. From now on, you will train, let's say, right? So we're going to start walking. We're going to start practicing what we just learned, what we just heard, but not in a, let's say, in a real world, quote unquote here. And I'm moving my hands, and naturally you can't see that I'm moving my hands doing the quotes. So it is like a trainee. So you have like a lab so that you can train a little bit before you go to the real deal, right? Before they finally reach Earth to dirty their hands, if we can use this expression, or while we can clean our hands, if we want to use a similar expression, but in a more elevated, spiritually elevated way. So this is the chapter that we are starting right now. It's preparations, which could be, as we said, the title of this second part of the book, The Messengers, because this is a real preparation for what they're going to face once they finally come to Earth to help people who are incarnated. So, after what we all saw on chapter 13, Aniceto come to meet Vicente and Andre that same night, and he starts by saying what they're going to do, right? So that tomorrow the 3 of them will leave for an assignment down on the Earth, and as I said, this leave, right, this absence from Nosolar will start now on chapter 14, but they will only get to Earth on chapter 33, so 20 weeks from now, here on our show. But it is interesting to see that, okay, this is also already a preparation. So let's start. Tomorrow we start. For now, we'll start now. We are starting right now. And Aniceto says that Telesforo suggests a number of things that he needs to do while on Earth, and Aniceto explains to us, and here I'd like to make a comment based on the original words in Portuguese relating to what it was translated to English here. because it seems to us that when we read this paragraph in English, and he says that, at least it is here in my version, but I can take care of them myself, of these tasks that Telesforo suggested to Aniceto. And once we go back on the Portuguese version, we can see and understand that what he wants to say by that is not that he wants and that he can do this by himself, is that this is a very important task, and Telesforo, and by what Aniceto analyzes the suggestions of Telesforo, he looks at the tasks and he thinks like this: well, I can take care of these tasks, and I don't need a huge group of people to take care of these tasks. So I can have you, Andre, and Vicente with me, so that you will learn with what we are going to do, right? So I don't need a huge group of people. I could probably do it myself, but that's not the point here. I'm going to take you both, and you will experience what we're going through and what we will go through, and you will have to work, right? And you will have the service to do. So you will reap, as he says in the end here, you will reap a week's worth of experience and service. So what Aniceto wants to tell us here is that sometimes, and that's what I can take from this, sometimes even when right, let's talk about me here, even if I can do something alone and by myself, it is also and always very interesting if I can find somebody who can learn from that experience, who can use their time, use their energy to learn and to serve. Why not have them on my side, even if I can do it, so that they can also learn from the same experience that I am having and that I am going through at that moment, right? And this is especially important and very particular if we have kids, if we have young people, because they can also learn with us the same thing that we are learning at that moment. And Andre, after hearing this, he says he was overjoyed. And I can relate to this when I think, or if I put myself in the shoes of a teacher who has a student who really wants to learn, right? Because if a student really wants to learn and the student has the opportunity of being closer or being more in contact with that subject that he or she wants to learn, he will be overjoyed if the teacher says, okay, I could do this, but I can use a hand, right? Can you lend a hand to me to teach me, or not to teach me, but to help me solve this problem, or to help me go through these things here so that we can maybe finish earlier. And the student, usually if he or she, as I said, really wants to learn and likes that subject, he will be overjoyed, right? Oh yes, of course, right now, can I go now? What can I do? What can I do to help? And this is what Andre is interested in, right? And then he explains why. Because he was able, and once again, all the time, I mentioned the book No Solar here. If you hadn't read the book, if you didn't listen to the previous set that we had here on No Solar, which was called No Solar in Our Home, we highly recommend that you go read the book and study the book so that you know what Andre is talking about here sometimes. So he says that he went to see his family, and he went to several times. He went back home. He went back, meaning that he went back to Earth to see his relatives, his ex-wife, his daughters, and his son a few times. But he was not able to help a lot of people because simply he couldn't do it. He didn't feel like he was ready to help. And he says, right, that he felt incapable of effectively helping them to find a desirable solution. He didn't have, and he keeps going, right? I didn't have the spiritual techniques for it, nor did I have enough confidence in myself. And this is natural, right? The first year that he spent in No Solar was learning for himself, learning what he would need to learn to confront his personal problems. But while he was there, he was probably walking on the streets, seeing people going through problems. And since he didn't have the techniques, he didn't go through special courses to help other people specifically, and didn't have any experience, let's say, in mediumship, as we are seeing in this book, how much confidence he has, right, or he had to help other people. And that's all these thoughts were going through his mind at this very moment. And here comes something that's very interesting related to this same chapter, to what Aniceto will ask them to do, them meaning Andre and Vicente. And Andre tells what Aniceto feels and sees and hears before Aniceto asking Vicente and Andre to have the same capacity, or to start having the same capacity, right? And Andre says, Aniceto had been listening to these deep inner thoughts. And Aniceto, naturally, Andre just described, was in tune with what Andre was saying or thinking, right? And Aniceto gives Andre an explanation, right? That he wasn't able to help because you hadn't yet acquired the ability to see, which is very, very interesting, right? We can all see naturally if we are blind, right? If we have a visual problem that we cannot see physically, but naturally we can look at stuff and we can see stuff, but can we really see? And that's the big question, right? There's a difference between looking at and seeing it. And that's one very important ability that we should develop. And right now, I remember that movie, Avatar, right, where there's this line when one of the characters says, I see you, right? And, well, I can see you, but do you really see me? And that's this ability of going deeper, right, in what you're seeing, in what we are observing. And Aniceto explains to us, right, while in the flesh, and that's why he explains, because this is what we go through when we are incarnated here. While in the flesh, we are often inclined to notice only the effects without considering the causes behind them. So in the beggar, we only see indigence. In the ailing person, in the sick person, only a physical breakdown. However, it is crucial, it is very important to identify the causes. And we usually tend to analyze only the surface instead of going deeper and trying to find why the person is going through what the person is going through at that specific time. And to what we can understand by this teaching from Aniceto, once he is telling us that while in the flesh we usually do this, what I can think of is that he is leaving this teaching here for us incarnated, because we are in the flesh right now. And how are we using our perception? How are we using our ears? How are we using our senses to feel, to really understand what that person is going through, right? Naturally, not all of us are doctors, not all of us are psychologists, not all of us are psychotherapists, so we won't be able, and maybe we shouldn't even want to be, not all of us, psychologists, to listen to all the problems of all the people and try to find the causes, because this is not the point. But if I have a specific task, let's say being a father, being a mother, right, and I have kids, for example, I should try and really strive to see behind what I can see from the outside, right? And find not only the effects, but the causes. What is causing what I am seeing right now? And sometimes, naturally, that's why we can't help a person. Right? Person is, for example, having a headache, right? And then I give the person a pill to get rid of the headache. But is the pill curing the problem, or is it just on the surface? Because the person maybe has a problem, I don't know, in a different kind of organ, and one of the consequences or one of the effects of that basic problem is a headache. So if I only give a pill for the headache, I'm not curing the person, so I'm not necessarily helping that person or really helping that person. So we really need to go deep into the causes to really identify the causes. And remember, Andre and Vicente, in their specific cases, it's even more important for them because they are doctors, right? They were doctors while incarnated. And so to all the doctors there, this is even more important. However, as we said in the previous episode, in the previous chapter of the show, we have to remember that to some degree, we are all doctors, right? We are all doctors, not medical doctors. We didn't go through school to become a doctor. But if I am at home, right, and if I have a son or a daughter, I am a doctor, right, of their lives. They will come to us for help. And how can I help if I don't go beyond seeing only the effects and go into the causes of what they're going through, right? So after saying this to us and to Andre and Vicente, he says, well, you weren't able to see. So what I'm going to do, and because of what we are going to need from you guys when we go to Earth, we're going to try to remedy the situation here. And there's a place here in No Solar next to the Messenger Center, which is called the Magnetic 8 Chamber for Sense Enhancement. And I'm asking you, please go there tomorrow at dawn before we leave, that they will treat you to get a little bit more of visual perception, right? To improve your senses so that when we are down there, we can and you can see a little better so that you can help more effectively that person or those people that we are going to be able to find. But although this aid or this chamber that will aid to enhance your senses magnetically, we need you to go through that process in prayer. So don't just expect the process itself to do everything for you. While you're going through that process, be in prayer, asking God to grant that possibility of enhancing, of expanding your visual abilities. And be mindful, be very attentive, be conscious of the grandeur of this sublime gift. And here we can make a clear reference to a previous chapter that we already read and discussed, where we discussed Joel, right? The problem of that Joel had before going to incarnate. he went through a process of enhancing his perception so that he could have the mediumship of going through the past lives of other people. And so he was able to see more. And how did it end? When he didn't use his ability with this idea of being mindfully conscious of the grandeur of his sublime gift, he got in terrible problems, in terrible mind problems, because he wasn't able to focus anymore on his life, and he was having these kinds of seizures of remembering past lives, and then he would disconnect himself from reality. So here's the same thing. Every time we ask for something, we ask for a gift like this one, we have to be mindfully conscious of the gift that we are asking God for. And we have to send thanks and saying to God, to like Aniceto says here, saying to the Eternal Majesty, a thought of, I'm going to dedicate myself to divine service and to His will, to His love, so that I can use this gift that I'm about to receive the best way that I can, providing help for others and using it for divine service. And this is very, very important, because naturally we have the free will. We can ask whatever we want from God. But the problem is, do we know how to use it? Are we going to use what we are asking to improve ourselves and to improve the world we are living in? Because if not, this is like a loan that I'm going to have to give back if I don't use it properly. Like the talents of the parable of the talents that Jesus tells us, and that we already mentioned here before, right? We receive talents, and it's a lot of talents. So what are we doing with these talents, right? How are we using them? So what Aniceto tells Andre and Vicente and us here is that, okay, see, I'm asking you to pray to God so that you can have your vision expanded, enhanced. But remember, I don't want, and he says that, I do not want to incite you to unwitting fanatical attitudes. Meaning, I don't want you to go ahead and keep praying and praying and praying just for the sake of praying and for the sake of asking stuff, right? Sometimes when, similarly, we do this while incarnated, and that's what he says later on. On the carnal realm, in the carnal realm, we used to pray in obedience to capricious fancies, pleading for easy answers that we wouldn't know how detrimental to our enlightenment those prayers would be, or those, if we were able, if God was able to grant those wants, or those quote-unquote here, needs that I create for myself. If we receive what we ask, what am I going to be doing with what we receive? So we have to be very mindful of what we are asking. So Andre, he says, prayer here, and he's talking about the spiritual realm, but we can, and I personally can really see how this sentence is so much the same, not only for the spiritual realm, but also for here, for the moment we are incarnated here. Prayer is the individual's commitment to God, a commitment involving witness, effort, and dedication to higher purposes. More than anything else, all our prayers should signify a faithful heart. So we should not take prayers lightly once we want to ask something. Because if we receive, it is a commitment to God. And not a commitment of repaying back or, oh, God, if you give me this, I will do that. No, it is a commitment for life. Because if I receive something, that something needs to be used as a divine service to humanity, not only to myself, not only to my family, but for humanity. And he finalizes his first talk by saying, and I quote here, "Those who pray in our spiritual condition use prayer to attune their minds to the highest spheres, and then a new light shines down on their pathways." So it is a commitment. If we pray, and if we pray on the level that they are, that's what Vicente Aniceto is telling us, we will receive new light on our pathways, right? And we will get in tune or attuned to the minds of the higher spheres. That doesn't mean, though, that it will be easy. That doesn't mean that all the problems are solved. No, the struggle continues, because it is through service, it is through our struggles, through our personal efforts, that I will measure my willingness of really doing and achieving what I need to achieve, of finalizing what I have started. It all starts with asking, but then it needs to be finished. So Andre didn't ask anything yet. He was just thinking, right? He was just thinking of, oh, I couldn't help. And the ones who I found on earth with problems. Aniceto looks at him and reads his mind, or perceives or hears his thoughts, and then explains all this. And Andre, all of a sudden, right, sees his ability, right, his remarkable ability, and didn't say anything else, because I think we would all be scared, right, if we can look at a person and the person looks at us, and we have that insight of, oh, that person is reading my mind. How scary would that be, right? So Andre was scared, and he didn't dare say anything. But it's interesting because he just mentioned that Aniceto read or heard his thoughts, right? And so he didn't say anything else, and he even began to fear the possibility that any one of my thoughts could be exposed. This is something that we should think about, and maybe not think about. I don't know, maybe there's somebody there listening to what we're thinking, and what are we thinking? Could our thoughts be exposed? I left this blank so that we can think on this, and if this is not a good exercise for us, let's try to really, little by little, at least, change the way we think about other people, and pay attention to our thoughts. There's a saying that invites us to think about this. It says, if you can't say what you think of a person to that person, try not to think that. So enough of that with that fear thought. And after this, Aniceto leaves, gave a few words of encouragement and friendship, and Vicente and Andre were left alone. They went back to bed. They had a good night of sleep, but it was a little brief. But they were anxious, waiting for the other day when they would get that help from the chamber, and then they go to that chamber. And then he starts describing a little bit. He doesn't describe too much, and we keep saying, this is not the place, and that's not the focus of our study here, of trying to understand the mechanics of these things, but rather to find out how we can use this in our daily lives, right? So he mentions that there were technicians there helping them to enhance their vision and so on. And while they were being helped, right, he says that this magnetic work did not rob them of their consciousness. So they followed, and he's talking about himself here. Andre is talking about himself. He says, I did exactly what Aniceto asked us to do, right? I used that opportunity to pray. And he had said before this paragraph, he had said, few times had I ever prayed with such emotion, right? Feeling all the words and having that feeling and praying from the heart, right? Not only using the proper words, but the words serving a purpose of what we are feeling and what we want to change and what we really want to receive. But what is interesting is his description of how that prayer was done. And he said that prayer was more of a commitment to work than an act of supplication per se. And how can we maybe think of some words that he used? He probably used something like this. You can come up with your own prayer naturally, but the idea that he wants to convey here is more or less like this. So, dear God, I am here to receive this help to enhance my vision. If I can have that granted to me, please grant it to me. But what I really want to do is to help other people. Even if I don't receive it, even if I am not able, if I don't have the grace of receiving this help, of enhancing my vision, I am here now to commit to work, to go with Aniceto, to go with Vicente, and with all our brothers and sisters to go do the work that needs to be done. So God, right now, I am committing myself to work, to your love, and to the divine service, even if I don't receive what I am here to get. So that's basically, putting some words to what he said is, okay, I am here to receive this. I know that maybe for any kind of reason, maybe I won't be able to receive as much or as little as my other brothers are. So, but I'm not here only to receive and say, oh, if I don't receive this, I'm not going to work. No, I am here to work. So if I am allowed to have that opportunity, I will be grateful. If I don't have that opportunity, I am grateful also. So that's basically what Andre is trying to convey to us here, and hopefully that's how we face our life. That's how we face our problems, being always thankful to God for what we receive or what we don't receive in life. And then a while later, they were free to go. So Andre says that at first he didn't see anything very unusual, but he felt a new kind of courage and joy in his heart, a little well-being that he had not known before, and as time goes by, his visual and auditory senses seem clearer. And that's when I come to make a comment on what we were talking in the beginning, because they keep saying that it's the visual enhancement, visual betterment, but here we can clearly see that this idea of visual that they're talking about is not just the perception through the eyes, but it's a full perception, which is we can note even better when we look again at the name of that center. He says, Aniceto says that the name of the center that will help them is the Magnetic Aid Chamber for Sense Enhancement. So it can enhance the senses, right? So it doesn't matter if it's tact, if it's tactile, if it's the auditive perception, the visual perceptions. So what they did to Andre and Vicente was to improve their visual and auditory senses, and he says that they seemed clearer. They left, and then they found Aniceto waiting for them at the center, and he seemed very pleased to see them back together, and their departure was set for noontime. They waited for that time, and Andre describes how they left No Solar, right? He says that they didn't leave No Solar like terrestrial travelers who, like us, right? We usually, when we go travel, we pack our bags, our backpacks, our computers these days, our laptops, clothes, and sometimes food. I mean, like he says, provisions and baggage. That's what we carry when we travel here on Earth. But Aniceto makes a kind of not a joke, but he plays around, right? And he says, well, all our baggage here on Earth, in No Solar, on the spiritual realm, we carry in our heart. And that reminds me and reminds us of that teaching from Jesus when he is on the Sermon on the Mount, more precisely on Matthew 6, verses 19 and 20, when he says that we should not, and here I quote from the New International Version of the Bible, when he says, quote, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." End quote. So what Aniceto is teaching us here, or reminding us here, is that naturally on earth, our treasures, for most of us, and I wouldn't say for most of us who are listening to this right now, at least I hope not, that our treasures are not suitcases, bags, and packages, right? Because if we really think about our lives, we will not live here eternally on earth or in the flesh, and we cannot carry to the other side, to the afterlife, what we can carry with our physical hands. So we can't carry our suitcases, our bags, and our packages, at least not the physical ones, just like what Jesus said, right? So let's not store these things. What do we need to carry then? What's in our hearts, right? Just like what Jesus said. So in the spiritual realm, what do we carry? Purposes, energies, and knowledge. And see, Andre is just telling us what Aniceto told them. So Aniceto is making a comparison, right? And saying that suitcases are probably purposes, bags are energies, and packages are knowledge. So instead of carrying suitcases, bags, and packages, we carry purposes, energies, and knowledge within our hearts. And if we do that positively, spiritually, we can serve better. And that's what he tells at the end. And above all, the sincere willingness to serve. So that's the baggage that we should carry with ourselves in the spiritual realm. And once again, going back a little bit when he says, while on earth, when we pray, we do this and we do this, here's the same thing. While here, and we are all incarnated, basically, we are the ones who are listening to this right now, we are here and we are training. If we face this life as a training for ourselves, we can, just like the advice that Jesus gave to us, fill our hearts with a different kind of energy, with a different kind of baggage, putting inside our hearts what we can really carry on to the other side, right? So if we start by having this sincere willingness to serve while incarnated, once we get to the real life, we are already doing it here. So we already trained. And we must it must be much easier to get rid of the rest of the things that we are still carrying inside of us. But if we don't train here, if we don't practice here, if we don't sincerely serve here, then it's going to take more and more time, more and more energy later and later on, right? So a lot of people, like their companions that were there, laughed because it is interesting. It's interesting, the comparison, right? We are traveling from this place to that place. What am I going to take with me? Well, if we're incarnated, we know, but if we are discarnated, right? Where are your bags? Where are your packages? It's all inside your heart. That's what Aniceto said. So it was a good way of saying what we needed to carry. And then Aniceto takes control of everything. Then he organizes, tell this person to do this and this person to do that, and explain how it will work. That he for that week that they will be all on Earth, he would go back on the spiritual realm on Nosolar to fix some things, to do some tasks, and while the spirits, Vicente and Andre will still be connected to Earth, doing and performing their services. So, full of hope, they said goodbye to their comrades in struggle, and this would be the beginning of their first training and work excursion on behalf of our fellow beings. So Andre is really willing to go and start this task, this new adventure, maybe. And Andre is this adventurous spirit who really wants to do big things, but he is learning, as we all are, on a day-to-day basis, learning to be patient, learning to take the time to listen before doing, and to studying before going to put your hands into practice, and making a mixture of this, making one mistake here and there, and having to go back and redo it. And that's the whole process of learning, right? We have to take our chances sometimes and do it, and no, it's not this way. And we saw a bunch of these things back in Nosolar, and it will always, well, not always, but it will take a very long time for us not to make mistakes anymore. So we need to really do it and just go and do it. If we have the good intention, if we are praying, if we are vigilant, right, let's put our hands to work, to study, make the best effort to do it. And that's what Andre is willing to do it right now. But as they are about to leave, as they are about to set off, Aniceto tells them something that will make them think, and naturally, it will make us think as well. He says, "This trip will be different for you. Of course, you are accustomed to free passage, which is granted by our superiors for our normal work-related activities. It is also granted to our enlightened brothers and sisters who are on the eve of reincarnated." So, Aniceto is about to explain something, and it is interrupted. What do you mean? Because Vicente doesn't understand why is he saying this. Okay, we've been to Earth so many times, and why are you telling me that this time will be different, right? We've been there, and Andre already said that, been back and forth a few times, and why is this going to be a different way that we are traveling now? And Aniceto may be a little bit puzzled also, not really, because if he read what Andre was thinking, and he read what Vicente was thinking, so he already knew that they would be that they were surprised once he started saying this. But what he wants to tell us here and explain how this movement between Earth and Nosolar and these spiritual cities or spiritual colonies is. And it is that there may be some obstacles, right, between coming from one side to the other and the other way around also. And he explains it, right? The lower regions between Nosolar and the physical realms are so large that they demand a wide, well-kept road that requires maintenance, just like important routes down on Earth. And we are thinking, okay, that's going too far. But what he explains is very logical. Well, he's talking about roads, but what is the road, right? We're going, let's say, I'm traveling from the United States to Russia, or from the United States to Japan. It's going to be through the air. Where is the road? So it's not a physical road that he's talking about. That's natural. So the problems of the road, right, it's, while we are discarnated, naturally it's not a physical problem, but it's a spiritual problem, right? It's the kind of thoughts that we will find once we are traveling from one place to the other. And because we are in spirit, depending on how elevated I am, maybe I can be influenced by those thoughts, by those spirits who are around that area, and maybe I can get caught because I'm still not well prepared to face that situation. It's not that I'm going to get stuck forever there, but it can be a big obstacle that I will need some help to get out of that place. So what happens, and what he is telling us here, is that for some of these paths, some of the ways that you can come from one side, meaning from Nosolar to Earth, can be easier than another way of going. And he says that in the other paragraph, when he says, let's imagine a huge river separating two different regions. Maybe there's, from one point to the other, there's a shallow spot that offers a speedy crossing, right? Oh, this way here is shallow, so you can cross, right, the river through this spot here, and it will be easier. But if you go further down or further up the river, maybe there are several passages across deep gorges. And how are you going to cross, right, through these gorges? Maybe there's a bridge, but if you don't know there's a bridge near, what are you going to do? It will take much more time. It will be very hard. It can be very dangerous. So that's what he is telling us here. Once we are going from one spot to the other, we have to see that there are different ways of going from one place to the other. And depending on how the spirit who is crossing from one side to the other is, it can be very dangerous. So I'm going to use his example, right, that he sets up for us in the previous paragraph than the one that I just read. And I didn't say in the beginning, but I'm saying now. Once again, please, if you're studying or listening to this and you have the chance, please have your book with you, so it's easier for you to follow what we are reading, what we are making comments, so you can take notes. You can even send us questions or send us comments, and maybe something we didn't explain it right, or maybe you have a correction on what we said, or maybe you have something else to say to add to what we said and make it even clearer. So we would be very, very thankful if you can make a comment or say anything to us. And that's much easier if you have the book with you. So going back to what Aniceto is telling us, he mentions, let's think of a spirit who is going to reincarnate, right? So the spirit is coming from Nosolar to Earth, or from a spiritual city, any spiritual city, to Earth, and he needs to, or she needs to go through those regions. And let's imagine the spirit has a certain level. He's not prepared. He's not an elevated spirit, doesn't know how to cross a deep gorge. And if we're going with that spirit, why are we taking that spirit through a deep gorge if we know that there's a place which is much easier for him or her to go through, right? So those spirits don't absorb inferior elements that could cause serious imbalances in their rebirth. These disturbances must be avoided. Those are Aniseto's words. So for those specific needs, we would need to take them through those paths who have less problems of those inferior elements. Now, and that's how he ends his paragraph or his talk at this very moment. He says, we, however, are pursuing an expedition of learning and experience. Consequently, we must not give preference to the easiest paths. So, see, we were talking about preparation in the beginning of the chapter, right? If you want to get prepared and be prepared for everything that can happen to you, why are you going to avoid the problems if you are ready to face those problems? At this very moment, not alone. And that's the big point that Vicente was making in the beginning, right? I am going. I don't have a problem going, but I want you two to go with me because it's going through with the teacher. It's going together that we can learn. And maybe one day you will be able to go through those same regions alone by yourself without having a lot of trouble because you will have faced those situations before and you will know how to act, what to do to solve the problem, to face those problems and go through those situations without any problem. So Aniceto, sorry, keep referring to Vicente and Aniceto back and forth. No, it's Aniceto. Vicente is Andres' friend. They are almost at the same level. Aniceto is the teacher here, right? So Aniceto is telling us that, okay, we can go and face some problems, but we need to be aware of the situations that we're going through. And maybe we are not ready to face those problems alone by ourselves. Maybe we need to have a teacher up to a certain degree in certain situations. Maybe the teacher can do it alone, but he doesn't want to go it alone, not because he can't do it, but because it is important to keep teaching, to keep serving, to keep helping, and to keep being helped, because we all need each other to keep on growing, to keep on learning, to keep on teaching each other what we need to learn. And once Andre hears this, he says that from what he was saying, he understood that, and I quote, that he could return to the colony whenever he wanted without encountering obstacles of any sort because of the spiritual power that enveloped him. However, he was making himself a pilgrim like us due to his devotion to the mission of teaching. End quote. And that's what we were talking about. Aniceto here is a great teacher. He wants us to follow him, to really pay attention to the road, to every single aspect of the road, because one day we will need to cross, we will need to go through similar roads, and if we are paying attention, if we are practicing while we are walking, if we are practicing while we are struggling, if we are really making an effort to be a better person, to be a better student, not only in reading, in watching, but in putting our hands to work, once I have the chance and the opportunity of crossing alone or of having the task of being the next teacher, I will be able to do it, right? And while in the flesh, if we can practice it, learning, doing, getting our hands dirty, quote unquote here again, getting our hands cleaner with divine service, we will get readier and readier, more and more ready to be able to finalize our missions or our services here on earth. And Andre recognizes that neither Vicente, neither himself had the adequate vibrational elements to do that alone. So, as many other spirits, right, he says that they were commonplace as the majority of the inhabitants of No Solar. You know, they could go back and forth, but they still had a lot to learn. So he looks at Aniceto again and he says, I had never seen energy and humility so beautifully married. Aniceto was energetical, right? He was strong. He was positive, right? But he was also humble because he knew that he could do it. But, and then I quote because I find this very beautiful, quote, Aniceto was directing us firmly like a strong, learned guide, but he had no qualms about making himself like us so that he could serve as a devoted companion, end quote. And that is a great teaching for all of us. We are all students, and even if we know a little bit more than another person, that other person may know something that I don't know. So at that specific point, I am the student and the other person is the teacher. So if we know something, if we have the responsibility of doing something, we should be firm and strong, but also be very, very humble to be together, working together, listening to what Jesus used to tell us, that he came here not to be served, but that he came here to serve. And with this, Andre says that meditating on this sublime lesson while in full volitation, while already starting that trip, already starting the journey, he watched as the spires of No Solar faded into the background, as the buildings of No Solar, the big towers of No Solar, they were getting away, farther and farther away from No Solar, to begin their journey to Earth, not without stopping in a lot of different places between No Solar and Earth and the physical realm of Levon right now. So as we make a pause right now at the moment where they are starting to volitate, right, to fly from No Solar to Earth, beginning at the very, very beginning of their journey, we are getting ready to embark in Andre, Aniceto, and Vicente's journey to Earth. Next chapter, entitled The Journey, we go on, learning with them about our journey while incarnated and getting prepared to live on the kingdom of God, which is not on the physical realm, but within our hearts, within the love of our Creator, who cares for us and who gives us our lives. Have a great week, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. email us and share your comments at www.kardakradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.